firstly, the two homeworks, lunchtime works. What were the answers?
Okay, 6 root delusions.
Okay.
Attachment, anger and ignorance, the first 3.
Yeah.
And then we have pride or conceit, doubt, and then wrong view.
And wrong view, okay. Yeah. Right, well done. And then?
Okay, so the 5 similarities between a primary mind and its mental factors: basis, duration, aspect, referent, and substance.
Okay, so the basis would be, basis is talking about the, whether it be a mental consciousness or a sense consciousness. So an eye consciousness and its accompanying mental factors are the same from their basis, both sense consciousness. The next one is?
Duration.
Duration, obviously the time, so how long they last together. Then?
Aspect.
Aspect, I mean, they have, so the main object, if it's a book, for example, appears similarly to the main mind and the mental factor which accompanies it. So the mental factor is influential in how you see the book, but the main object seen by both the mind and the mental factor is the same. So they take on the same aspect of the book. Right?
Referent.
Referent will be the same thing, I think. It would be what the object which they're referring to, wasn't it? I'd have to check that in Tibetan what it is, but a referent. I would imagine it's the same thing. So they take on the same aspect would be the aspect of the object appearing to them. So that's from the point of view of what's appearing to them. Referent would be from the point of view of what's out there appearing. There's a slight difference from that point of view, isn't there? And then the last one? Substance.
Substance, yeah.
Substance would be what that means is that, so for example, if you think about a phone and the impermanence of the phone, they're one substance. They're all part of the same thing, aren't they? So this is meaning that substance in this instance. Substance is a very important thing to actually understand, because in the system we're talking about there, where that comes from, it's a Sautrantika point of view, and in the Sautrantika point of view, all impermanent things have substance. So permanent things don't have substance, and therefore substantially existent things for Sautrantika are ultimate truths, because they ultimately exist, because they're substantial. Whereas permanent things don't ultimately exist, they're conventional truths, because they don't, they're just abstract. Permanent things. Permanent thing would be like a meaning generality, the image to the mind, or non-compounded space, or cessation, or those sorts of things. They're permanent, and they're just abstracts. They're not. There's no substance to them. Therefore, they're conventionally existent. But of course, that same understanding is reversed when you get up to Pasankhya, because there is no substance, and lack of substance is what's ultimate truth. The other way around. And that's why going through this. Tenets is a very important thing to study, because you go through the different tenet systems and you understand what, and really the lower systems that gain you an understanding, which you then get rid of when you get to Pasankhya. That's why it's so important to go through all the systems. Anyway, so that's the 5 things. All right, well, let's go on. Any more questions before we move on? No? Clear as mud, is it? Mm-hmm. Right. Right, so now that completes the first bit of the quote. Now we move on to the second bit. The mind is devoid of mind. Now obviously what's that referring to in terms of the 3 turnings of the wheel that we talked about in the beginning? The mind being the basis is from the first turning of the wheel point of view. The mind being devoid of mind is talking about the emptiness of the mind, obviously, the non-true existence of the mind. That's coming from the second turning of the wheel point of view, the Prajnaparamita Sutras, which is talking about emptiness. Now, the emptiness of the mind is, of course, the same emptiness of everything else. We're obviously, talking from the Vasanga point of view, not the lower schools point of view, but from the Vasanga point of view. Emptiness of phenomena is the same thing as emptiness of persons. There's a division into phenomena, emptiness of phenomena, and emptiness of persons. But generally, as far as the emptiness is concerned, it's the same. The nature of persons, although we divide emptiness into that of persons and that of phenomena, the nature, the emptiness, is the same for both. So that means that whether you're talking about a table, or you're talking about a chair, or you're talking about a person, or you're talking about a mind, its lack of true existence, its lack of substantial, of intrinsic existence is the same. Okay, so, but with the mind, it's one of the most important things to realise as being empty, if not the most important thing. Okay. And as I explained briefly yesterday, the reason is that although you have to eventually realise the emptiness of everything, persons and phenomena, the initial direct cause of afflictive emotions, of delusions, is believing in a self of persons, isn't it? In a self. Now, what they say is that, or what the Nagarjuna says and Chandrakirti say, is that as long as you believe in a self of phenomena, you will believe in a self of person. So although you might negate the self of persons, it's not enough. You do need to negate the self of phenomena as well, because otherwise you'll end up believing in a self of persons again. But that doesn't mean, even though that's the case, that doesn't mean that the emptiness of the self of persons is not more important to understand, in a sense, than the one of phenomena, because that's the root one. That's the one that causes you delusions. Believing in a self of persons is a thing which creates subject-object duality. Believing in a self of persons means you're holding on to a truly existent self, and therefore you generate what we call inappropriate attention, which is dividing the world into good, bad, and neutral. Because it's good if it helps you, it's bad if it harms you, and it's neutral if it's got nothing to do with you. You do that on the basis of a self. Because if you don't believe in a self, why would it be good or bad or neutral? To what? It's good or bad or neutral to a self, to me. So, and the basis of inappropriate attention, dividing the world into good, bad, and neutral, is the basis of three root delusions. We just mentioned the three root delusions there. Ignorance towards things which don't concern you, ill will or hatred or anger towards things which are bad towards you, and attachment or greed or neediness towards things which you think are helping you. So therefore that's the root of the three delusions, and the three root delusions are the root of karma and suffering. So the root of suffering is principally the self of persons. So, and then when you look at the self of persons, when you look into what is me, what I am, initially before you do any analysis or any investigation, then it's quite possible to think that this is me here. And in fact, before someone does any analysis or has heard any teachings or whatever, particularly when you're young, I think, probably less so when you're older, but especially when you're a teenage, and if I look at my sister's teenage daughters, for example, I think the body is probably where they see the self, isn't it? My sister's teenage daughters are constantly all day long. They're taking selfies all day long. It's unbelievable. One, all the time. So obviously, for people that age, the body is pretty much identified as the self. But as you get older, I think for very good reasons, you start to stop identifying the body. Partly for the reason that it's not so interesting or attractive to see the body as a self, but also because you see that the body changes. You see that you're not fixed as that thing. You might have been good looking and everything when you were young and fit and healthy, but now you're not. And the body's not working like it used to work, and things go wrong. And that makes it very clear, obvious in fact, that the body's not you. Because hang on, I'm still here, but what I thought I was 20 years ago when I was young, fit and good looking isn't young, fit and good looking, but I'm still here. So it becomes quite clear that actually maybe the body isn't me. We certainly don't want the body to be. So that happens as you get older, I think, and also I think if you start to analyse and check into whether what is me, what is myself. If you do that even when you're young, with a bit of intelligence and not just blindly, what you feel, to understand that the body is not used quite is easier, isn't it? The body's something changing. Before I was a baby, before I was a child, and I had a totally different body, and yet I was still me. And now I'm grown up, and even if I'm a teenager, and if you use your brain a bit, which admittedly teenagers tend not to, if you use your brain a bit, you can see, well, hang on, the body's totally changed, so how can that be me? So a little bit of analysis, very quickly you can understand that, hang on, the body it's fairly easy to negate the body as being me. So then what you're left with? You're left with really the concept that, well, I must be my mind. There must be something within me, within my mind, whether you accept it as the brain or not the brain, whatever you do, your personality is you. Your what you are, who you are, how you feel, what sort of emotions you have, what's good about you, bad about you, all that's what's me, not the body. So, therefore, when you think about it like that, what is it we cling on to as being myself? It's the mind, it's not the body. So therefore, obviously, if negating the self of persons is the most important thing as far as generation of delusions is concerned, and we say what do we cling to as being a self of person, say that's the mind, then obviously knowing the emptiness of the mind becomes really important. It's the root of everything, it's the focus of where we really want to be concentrating as far as understanding its emptiness. So, therefore the mind is devoid of mind. The mind is empty of mind. Now understanding the emptiness of the mind, in general, is exactly the same as understanding the emptiness of anything else. As a general rule, it's the same process, the same logic, the same reasonings, the same reasons you have for all other emptiness, the fourfold reasoning, the sevenfold reasoning, being one with its parts different from its parts, the reasoning of dependent arising, reasoning of one and many, the diamond fragments, all these different reasonings, the reasoning which looks into cause, the reasoning that looks into effect, the reasoning that looks into nature, we divide into three, the reasonings. You've got the reasoning that looks at causes, the reasoning that looks at the as it is now, and the reasoning that looks at effects. Anyway, all those different reasonings we look at in order to establish the emptiness of anything. It's the same for the mind, same thing. Experientially, there is a little bit of difference, because, and we'll try this meditation probably after the break, because we'll be a bit more waken up after. First session after lunch is not a good one to do a meditation on emptiness of the mind. Really, it's likely to end up being a meditation on the sleepiness of the mind. The meditation on the emptiness of the mind is actually quite fun, really, because what are you doing? You're trying to find a mind, and you're trying to look at, with your own mind, to look with your own mind. And it's quite different from other things, because, in other things, like, in essence it's the same, and when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's the same thing, because whether you're looking for a phone or a table or a person or a mind, you can't find it when you look amongst the parts. But with the mind it's a bit more interesting, because you're looking right at your own mind, and you watch the things arise in your mind, and you see, where did that thought come from? And you're dealing directly with your mental consciousness, and with all your consciousnesses, and you're looking directly at the ariser. Where did it come from? What's it doing now? Is it staying? No, it's not. Where's it going? Is that thought me? Is that thought me? Is that thought of the mind? And you're looking directly with your mind, and with what's happening in your mind, and seeing that you can't find it. So experientially, it's quite a it's a little bit different from other things in terms of doing the experience. But again, as far as the main reason is concerned, it's the same. Now, as far as the main reason then goes, what's the most difficult thing to realise in terms of emptiness of anything? What's said to be the most important point in realising emptiness? the biggest stumbling block, but if you've got over, you've pretty much done the whole work, they say. What is it? In the fourfold reasoning, it's the first one. Alright? You've obviously all got over it already, and you don't need to. It's identifying the object to be negated, isn't it?
Yeah.
Object of negation. The object of negation. So, identifying the object of negation for whatever you're looking at in terms of emptiness is the primary thing to be done. As you've probably read and seen, once you've done that, you're almost all the way there. Because all you've got to do then is show it's not there. It's, you know, you've heard all the analogies. It's like you've got to find the lion, that fat lion. You've got to find the lion in the room, and of course, unless you know what a lion looks like, no chance of doing it. If you've never seen a lion before in your life, you've just heard the word lion, got no idea what it looks like, then there could well be a lion in this room, and you would not know any different. But if you know what a lion is, if you know exactly what a lion looks like, and you then ask the question, well, is there one in this room? It's quite easy actually to say, well, it doesn't take much to figure out there isn't one. You know, a small cursory examination and you'll find out there isn't one. Same thing with emptiness. That once you identify what it is that's not there, then all you need to do is just see if it's there or not. And it's quite easy, actually. So the most important thing with emptiness, whether it be the mind or anything else, is the object of negation. Now, what I have always found, and I've taught this loads and loads of times because I always found it the most inspiring and the most useful way to identify the object to be negated. And it involves going through a little story and involves me relating this story to you. And as I go through this story, at various points along the story that I'm telling, I'm going to be asking you the same question again and again. And no need for you to actually sort of answer it verbally or to say the answer, but answer it in your minds whenever I ask it. It'll be the same question every time. And the question will be, is the phenomena or is the thing we're talking about, is it the same or is it different? That will be the question. Is it the same or is it different? Okay. Now I've used loads of different examples in this. I try to do is a different one each time. Sometimes they work out better than others. So let's see how this one works out. We're going to use the example of Jamyang Centre Leeds. All right. There's right. Here's the story. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, in one of his visits, and this doesn't necessarily conform with how things have happened. This is my story, okay? Lama Zopa Rinpoche comes to England. He's been to England a few times, comes to Jamyang, London, and one day visits Leeds. Comes to Leeds and says, right, well, I think we should have a centre here. Seems like there might be some people interested in Buddhist teachings. Let's have a centre in Leeds. So, and I'm sure there are other people who were involved before Kerry and Fiona and all that, but let's use Kerry and Fiona for now. So he turns to Kerry, who's just recently left the monastery, and says, right, we want a centre in Leeds. So Kerry goes out, finds a building, not this one. He finds a building, he finds a very cheap, small building, just one room, because that's all he can afford in the beginning. There's not much money, obviously, in the beginning. All they can afford is one small room, and it's sort of on the edges of the city. Very simple room, because it's cheap, very cheap rent. So he hires the room. He puts a few Buddha images and pictures of its owners and Ramzopa and one tanker. Here's one tanker, and puts a sign across the front of the small room. It's got a shop window type thing. Puts a sign across the front saying Jamyang Centre Leeds. Okay, and he's the only person involved because he has to run all the classes and do the teaching and meditations and pujas. And there's a few people come, not many. A few people come to visit the place and do meditation. And so he starts up this centre. Now the centre runs for 6 months or so, and in that 6 months, more and more people start to come. People start to hear about this for the first time ever. Probably isn't, but imagine it is the first time ever. There's a Buddhist centre in Leeds, and people who are interested in the Buddhist teachings start to come. And the classes become more popular. A little bit more money comes in. A couple of slightly wealthier people start to come along, and they all start to go, well, we're liking this place, we're liking to do the meditation, we're liking to hear the Buddha teachings on Buddhism, but we can't keep coming to this dingy old room and doing this because it's just, it's not big enough and it's not nice enough, and we need something better. So all the students, and particularly the wealthy students who've got more money, they chip in, they all donate some money. And so Kerry is able to rent a bigger place. And that bigger place is more in central. It's only one room, but it's a bigger room. It's a bit more carpeted. It's got an entrance with a foyer where people can leave their shoes, slightly bigger. He can put it slightly nicer, got a couple more tankers, a couple more Buddha statues, get some cushions. Before he didn't really have any cushions. People had to sit on chairs, old chairs. Now you get some cushions on the floor. And the sign outside he brought from the old place, Jamyang Buddhist Centre, and puts it in front of the new place. Right, first time. Is it the same place or is it different? Now, time goes on. The new place is attracting more attention. It's in the centre of town, so a lot more people are coming. It becomes more popular. A couple more teachers come along, get involved. They start. Gentashi from London starts to come up every now and then and give teachings, and a lot more people start to come and get involved. And this one room with its little foyer isn't really big enough. But fortunately, the room next door have just moved out, and they managed to acquire the room next door. And the landlord of the place says, well, look, if you want to expand this place and make it into a bit bigger, because there's just one room at the moment, same landlord for both rooms, if you want to knock them through and just make it one big room, that's fine with me. So they do that. They knock down the middle wall and they make it into one big room. So it's now got a much bigger foyer with a kitchen area as well, because the other room had a kitchen area at the front of it. So you've got a small kitchen, you've got places for the shoe, you've got a little reception area now in the foyer area. You've knocked down the wall, which was in between the two rooms, and made them into one big room. You've therefore managed to expand the whole area where people can come to teachings, the cushions and the things and the tables and the thrones, a few more tankers, some pictures, some prayer flags, and then Tim comes along and starts a little library up. So there's a little library in the corner because there's enough space to do that. Now again, is it the same or is it different? Then time goes on, it carries on doing well. More teachers, Gentashi comes up more, visiting teachers start to come. It gains. In Leeds it becomes quite well known, and more people start to come, so it builds up in place. But then there's a fire in the middle of Leeds, and unfortunately the block which Jamyang Buddhist Centre was in is in the centre of this fire, and the whole thing gets burnt down. The whole centre gets burnt down. In the midst of it being burnt down, Kerry and a couple of the other, Fiona was there as well, and Tim. Tim rushes in, being super brave, into the middle of the flames.
Heroically.
And grabs some of the books. Unfortunately, some of them have already been burnt, but he managed to grab a handful of books from the Jamyang library. Kerry managed to run in and grab some of the tankers and a couple of the pictures. And Fiona manages to get into the... She's not quite so brave. So she goes into the reception area and she grabs some of the books of lists of students and some of the registration materials and that sort of thing, and runs out with them. So they get those. And luckily, Fiona also, because she wasn't carrying too much like the other people, she grabs the sign. Because the sign is on the outside of Jamyang Buddhist Center, the original sign, Jamyang Buddhist. She managed to grab the sign and take that with her. So the whole place gets burned down, nothing left of it, except for the sign, a few books and a few bits and pieces from the Gompa which Kerry managed to grab. So what do? We've lost. Well, we can't give up on Leeds Buddhist Centre. There's so much, it's so popular, so many people love it. We need a new place. So it just happens at the same time that this all happens, they get the insurance money, and it was well insured, fortunately. So they get lots of insurance money, along with the fact that the people really all felt very sorry for them, that the whole place burned down. They were doing such a good job. And so the people who sponsor and look after and help the place, they donate a bit more money and they get somewhere better. Use it as an opportunity. Get somewhere better. So they moved down the road to this lovely building on the first floor with big windows out the front. And it's now got more rooms. It's got an office, pretty much like we're looking here. It's got an office. It's got a big shrine room like this. It's got a much bigger library area. It's got a whole area outside which is a kitchen. And a place for the shoes and for a little shop that sells things. Whole new place. Some of the books that Tim had rescued get put into the library and they add a few more onto that. The office starts, some of the stuff that Fiona managed to salvage from the reception area, she puts in the office and adds some more things like that. And some of the things from the shrine room which Terry managed to save come into the shrine room, but that's added with lots of other new things as well. But the sign, the original sign, Jamyang Buddhist Centre, is put on the front. Again, is it the same place or is it a different place? Now, I'm not going to go on too much longer. But as this new centre starts to do very well, but Fiona and Tim's running the library. Fiona's running. Kerry's found that he's been called to another centre in Czechoslovakia for some reason. And Lambsdorff Rinpoche sent him there, so he's got no choice, he's got to go. So Kerry goes to Czechoslovakia. Tim's still running the library, Fiona's still running the office and the SPC, and they bring in another guy called Adam to be the director of the place. And he's got slightly different ideas to what Kerry had. About how it should be designed and how it's run. He turns it all round. He sort of puts the shrine where the shrine was on this side of the room, he puts it on the other side of the room, puts the pictures on this side, and puts the library near the window rather than over there. He changes it all around a bit to how he thinks it should be. And the other thing is he doesn't like the sign. The sign's been there since the beginning, and Kerry was very attached to it, so it was always stayed with it. So Kerry kept it. Once Kerry had gone, there was no reason to keep the sign. So they got a new sign. Got one of those, you know, like those flashing ones. Jamyang Buddhist Centre. So again, is it the same centre or is it different? Now we're going to stop there. Whenever I asked you that question, what were you coming up with? Was it the same or was it different?
I was thinking in terms of the two truths. Also the signs seem to be, there's no sign and signified, there's no obvious relationship to them, no necessary relationships between sign and signified. But also in terms of conventional truth, some of the times it seemed the same. When you just extended it, it seemed the same place. When we moved, it didn't seem, but at the same time, ultimately, it seemed to be different all the time. Even from moment to moment, it seemed to be a different place.
So it was different.
Yeah.
Same or different?
Got both all the time.
Both.
Yeah, I thought both.
Yeah, did you the same?
If you go to the end of the story, if you look at the beginning of the story and go to the end of the story, the Jamyang Buddhist Centre, which existed at the end of the story, there is not one single thing within the Jamyang Centre at the end which was there at the beginning. Nothing. Everything's changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Except its purpose.
Well, it's okay, good question. We'll get to that. Hang on to that.
That's what hang
on to that. In terms of the people who are working there, all different. In terms of the physical location, different. In terms of the things within that location, different. The sign, also different by the end. Nothing the same from the beginning. So the question, when you go through each of the chains of Jamyang Buddhist Centre, and you're asking, is it the same or is it different? What are you doing? You're trying to locate something within that conglomeration of Jamyang Buddhist Centre, which is Jamyang Buddhist Centre. Right? And if you can find something which is Jamyang Buddhist Centre, then you can say it's the same, can't you? Because you can say, well, in the beginning that was Jamyang, that thing that was Jamyang Buddhist Centre was still there then, and still there then, so that's Jamyang Buddhist Centre. That makes it the same, doesn't it? And obviously, in terms of physical things, in terms of material things, you can't find anything. Nothing. In terms of the people who work at Jamyang Buddhist Centre, there's nothing. Completely different. In terms of the books, so from most points of view, there's nothing. It's always different. There's nothing within that conglomeration of things. So what is it that's Jamyang Buddhist Centre? What is Jamyang Buddhist Centre? So Fiona is saying it's the purpose of Jamyang Buddhist Centre.
The meaning that I give it, though.
The purpose.
Yeah.
But then the question, so where's the purpose? Where does it exist?
Well, I guess in my mind, but I'm sort
In
of
your mind.
labelling it on what I think is appropriate to label it.
Right, but where does the purpose actually exist?
Do we have a document to give us our purpose?
Mission statement.
Even if there was a document,
Yeah.
There could have been a document written out on one piece of paper when the centre started in the first place.
Yeah.
That got burnt.
Yeah.
And the centre got burnt down, and now it's on a new document. So that can't be the purpose because that's changed.
Yeah.
The document's changed, so the thing's changed.
The full wording could be the same, though.
The wording could be the same,
Yeah.
but the wording is just either it's black and white on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
which has changed.
Is it not just an ideological purpose?
Well, okay, but where is it? Where is that purpose? Now, if it's in the mind, if it's in Fiona's mind, then are you saying that Jamyang Buddhist Centre is your mind? No.
Could it be a generality in various people's minds?
Well, it could be. But so if it's a generality in various people's minds, then there's one Jamyang Centre that's in your mind, and one Jamyang Centre in Fiona's mind, and one Jamyang Centre in mine. There's
Possibly.
5 or 6 different Jamyang Buddhist
Yeah,
centres.
yeah.
And if one of us dies, we've lost part of Jamyang Buddhist Centre, haven't we?
Yeah, I possibly have.
As it was,
Yeah.
Simply put.
So the purpose can't really be Jamyang
No.
Buddhist Centre again.
No.
Can you,
No, is it,
sorry,
it's
no,
good.
can you see it? I mean, when we were saying it was different yet it was the same,
Mhm.
all the time you were describing it, it still had the same name,
Mhm.
but the thing was changing.
Yeah.
So, but the thing still had the purpose to be a centre.
It did.
So it kept just coming back at the end into label and function
Mm.
as opposed to purpose.
But again,
is that
where's the
what-
label?
The label is Jamyang Buddhist Centre.
Where is it?
Well, even though the sign went, they still had that name.
Where?
It was outside each building. That outside, and then eventually.
Okay, it's outside your building. So the original name that was outside the original Jamyang Buddhist
Yeah.
Centre was on a wooden board, let's say, and then when Adam bought the new one, which was the flashing one, that was on that.
But it was still the same
So
name.
neither of them were Jamia and Buddhist Center, were they?
No,
No.
no, they were the different ones. They were labelling the different ones.
They were different?
Yes.
No, I'm talking about the sign itself.
Yeah, all right.
The
Not
sign
label.
itself is not Jamia
Oh,
and
the
Buddhist
sign
Center.
itself isn't. No,
No.
No, I meant the label.
The label, but where is the label?
The words.
Where are they?
They're just words.
Or imagination.
The words, when they come out of your mouth, they're words coming from your
Yeah,
mouth.
yeah.
When they come out of somebody else's mouth, they're words coming out of somebody else's mouth. But they're not Jamia and Buddhist Center, are they? You can't
No.
hold meditations on your on the
No,
words, can you?
just a label.
So they know
You can't teach inside the words.
No.
So,
I get
so
that.
that's not Jamia and Buddhist Center, is it?
No.
No.
It's just, but it can't just be.
Is there anything else which is Jamia and Buddhist Center?
Not really. I thought the bit when you talk about death and they start talking about the fire, and then rescuing bits seemed like bits of the mind going forward into the new body. Almost, that's the analogy.
Well, yes, possibly. But again, where is Jamia and Buddhist Center? Take the story's an analogy, right?
Yeah.
Take the analogy into your own life, into your own mind, into your own body. When we were born, or when we were, the first time we were actually aware of our own existence, however old we were, there was a sense of me. Now that sense of me carried on through your life in the same way that the sense of Jamia and Buddhist Center carried on through all the changes. But when you were 3, and then if you go from year 3 to when you were year 10 or 11, there's nothing whatsoever within your mind and body existent at the age 11 that was there when you were 3. Nothing at all. It's all totally changed. Every thought is a different thought, every part of your body is a different thing. And yet there still seems to be a sense of me, doesn't there? Go on through your life, go up through teenage years, to 20s, 30s, as your body changes, as your life changes. Again, everything that you are, every atom of your body and every thought in your mind totally changes. And yet still there's a sense of me abiding through all those changes. But, as in the example of the Jamia and Buddhist Center, when you ask where is that me that seems to pervade through all those changes, seems to be there from when you were a child and go through all the changes as you grow up and get out, where is it? You can't find it, can you? It's totally unfindable. So the object of negation, whether it be, and you take this, go to your mind. Think of your mind when you were a small child, if you can. Think of mind when a small child and the way it was. It was excited by things which nowadays wouldn't do anything to excite you. It was interested in things which probably now don't interest you anymore. It had a bit of wonderment in things which you're no longer wondering about. It had anxiety, which you probably don't have now, and insecurity, which you don't, or you might have now.
I have more now.
different.
Yeah.
But none of those things which that mind had when you were a small child are there anymore, are they? Similarities of them are, but they're not the same, not anymore. And yet there was a feeling that I still have my mind. I haven't lost my mind completely, isn't there? There's a feeling that the mind I had when I was a child is still the mind. Really think experientially, not just intellectually or theoretically. Think about your mind. And if you go back to when you were a child, you don't think that wasn't you. That was you, wasn't it? I grew up. I went through teenage years. I was a terrible teenager or a good teenager or whatever it was. I was a child. I grew up in such and such a town, in such and such a street, and this all happened to me. You don't think of that happened to someone else. It happened to you, didn't it? I grew up.
Can I ask at this point, 'cause,
Yeah.
sometimes I've heard this explained in this way, and then somebody says, but I'm aware of my personality or my tendencies,
Mhm.
and they have continued. In other words, my tendency to be
Yeah,
I
fine,
don't know,
good
a jealous
question.
person, or a tendency to be a
Absolutely, yeah.
mean person, or
Yeah,
whatever, or an anxious person, even though the
Mhm.
anxieties are different.
Mhm.
And I don't think I've ever really understood the answer to that. So.
What is a tendency, right? We have a tendency to be anxious. Your tendency of being anxious when you're a child is an emotion in your mind when you're a child, yes?
Yes.
Now, you have an emotion in your mind now, which is also anxious, But the emotion you had in your mind when you were a child that was anxious was there in your mind when you were a child, and is very similar. It may be similar, it looks similar to the emotion of anxiety you have in your mind now, but it's totally different. That was a thought you had when you were a child. Basically, an emotion, anxiety, or anything else, depression, they're just thoughts. They're all just thoughts, aren't they? That's what we learn through, just simple meditation. They're just thoughts. We identify with them and we make them more solid, but they're what they are. It's just a thought.
So we presume they're part of us having a tendency that's...
We presume it, that's right.
Yeah.
But the thought you had in your mind of anxiety or whatever else it may be when you were a child and the thought you have now of anxiety are totally different thoughts.
In the same way the Japanese Buddhist center is
Totally different, exactly.
I see.
So there's nothing that was there when you were a child. It may look similar, but you still think you were there, don't you?
Yes.
You still think that was me when I was a child. It wasn't someone else. It was me that grew up. I grew up in this place. That were my parents. That was the school I went to. But if there was something like you that was there when you were a child, and is still there now, it would have to be something which went through all the changes you went through. Or if you go back to Jamyang Buddhist Center, there must be something within Jamyang Buddhist Center that was there when Jamyang Buddhist Center was first founded in the little shop, in the little room, and it would have to have stayed there through all the changes and still be there at the very last now. And if you say, what is that? There's nothing. Is there?
The label, isn't there?
Well, the label, again, what is the label?
Just 3 words.
No, what is the label? What is it? Is it form, feeling? Is it impermanent? Is it a mind? Is it a thought? Is it a sign? Is it a physical thing, a non-physical thing? What is it?
It's as much an idea.
It's an idea, it's a thought.
Yeah.
It's a thought. So, is it your thought thinking about Jamyang Buddhist Center, or is it my thought? Which one is it? Jamyang Buddhist Center.
Lots of people's thoughts, I would have thought.
So there are lots of Jamyang Buddhist centers. There are as many Jamyang Buddhist centers as there are people thinking about it.
Well, there's certainly there's many labels. I'm not saying that there are as many Buddhist centres.
Well, no, I'm asking what's Jamyang Buddhist Center.
That's
So
different.
your answer needs to be what Jamyang Buddhist Center is.
Yeah.
And if you say it's a label or a thought, then every person who has a thought of Jamyang Buddhist Center, that's Jamyang Buddhist Center. But you can't run classes in your thoughts.
No, true. The Jamyang Buddhist Centre as a label is different from Jamyang Buddhist Centre the place.
So what's Jamyang Buddhist Center the place? The Jamyang Buddhist Center the label is not a Jamyang Buddhist Center, is it?
No, it's not. It's a label which
So
a
it's
label
not
of 3
Jamyang
words,
Buddhist.
which is could mean bears no relationship
Right, so
to the
it's not
actual
Jamyang
label.
Buddhist Centre.
Yeah, it's not.
So what is Jamyang Buddhist Center?
Jamyang Buddhist Centre is it's a continuum.
Where is it continued? Where?
It's in Leeds.
The same principle applies to Jamyang Buddhist as to our minds.
Yeah.
And the important thing here is, the important thing about that story and that analogy is what you're trying to do. Every time you're asking the question, is it the same or is it different? You're trying to find something which identifies this thing as Jamyang Buddhist Center.
Mm.
And when you do it with your mind or with your body or yourself, each part of your life, whenever you go to any part of your life, you're trying to find the thing which is me. Now, and when you're trying to do that, the thing which if you find something, if you can find something which abides, that is the object of negation. That's the thing which is not there, which you think is there. So if you think in terms of your mind or yourself, yes, I was there 10 years ago, and I'm still here now. That was me. 10 years ago, I was a monk 10 years ago, I said. It wasn't somebody else who was a monk 10 years ago. I was a monk 10 years ago. I don't think it's somebody else. And then, since then, I've gone 10 years and I'm not a monk. But it's still me, even though I'm not wearing robes anymore, it's still me. If such a thing existed, if there was such a me that was me when I was a monk and is still a me now, that would be the object of negation. That's the thing that we think is there, which is not there. So, if you can get to that, if you can get that understanding of what we think is there, whether it be a mind, whether it be a person, whether it be a Buddhist center, whether it be a chair or a table, what you think is there, that would abide through all the changes. And if we're talking about the mind, which we are, then you're talking about my mind. When I was a child, that was my mind, which was my mind. And I've still got my mind now. I haven't changed it. I haven't swapped it with somebody else's in the meantime. It's still my mind. But if that was such a mind, that was my mind there when I was a child, and was my mind when I was a teenager, and my mind as I grew up, and is still my mind now, that will be the object. That's the object negation, isn't it?
It's almost easy to do with the mind as an object than Jamyang Buddhism. And I don't know why that is.
It's the same principle, but
it feels
yes.
an easier concept, because to me,
Well,
there is a Jamyang Buddhist centre. No, but there is, from that story, somewhere there is something that we're all referring to as Jamyang Buddhist centre. But the idea of the mind constantly changing and being different all that time makes it easy to understand that it's not the same.
possibly, but
Do you know what I mean?
I think experientially we hang on to me more than we do to Jamyang Buddhist Centre.
Yeah, that's the irony, isn't it? That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
And when you say my mind, you're automatically assuming there's a person behind you that has that mind, that owns it.
Well, even if it's your mind at that very moment, that's enough to be thinking it, isn't it?
Yeah,
So-
but more so, the you know, my mind was my mind 10 years ago. How did I manage to study at college? How did I do the Geshe studies? And I still know, well, not many of them.
Exactly.
I've forgotten most of it,
But you
but
still
I
know.
still know some of it.
Yeah.
How could I do that if it wasn't my mind that did the Geshe studies?
And that's the
Impossible.
way we hold on to it. Yeah.
That's where you hold it.
Exactly.
And that's the object negation.
Yeah.
As I say, the most important thing in the whole meditation and understanding of emptiness is to get that.
Yeah.
The object negation. What is it which I think is there? What's me or my mind? What is my mind? What is Jamyang Buddhist Centre? What is this self? Once you've done that, then all you got to do is find out it's not there. Which is easy compared to a thing. So,
How does memory persist in terms of the aggregates?
well, memory is a function of the gross mind, isn't it?
Mm.
But in terms of what we're talking about here, your memory today, so you remember an event that happened 5 years ago. Your memory of that event yesterday is not the same thought as your memory of that event. I mean, Chinese whispers
Yeah,
tells us that, doesn't it?
yeah,
Your memory of things changes.
yeah.
So memory is not something which stays the same, is it? It's
No.
always different.
yeah, yeah.
So again, it's not the idea that I have memories. I mean, people, it's quite a common thing, isn't it, that normal people say that live your life so you'll have lots of memories when you're old.
Mm.
But that's like saying, well, you know, I'm going to have these memories and they're always going to be the same. But a memory changes. Depending on how your life is and how you feel and how you might have a good memory of something and it might turn into a bad memory of something. It's ludicrous to hang on to your memories. For what? Your memories are not something fixed or solid. Your memory of something, an event, changes all the time. There's nothing there to hang on to. There's nothing there to stay. It changes. It's a different thought. And it depends upon other things. So anyway, that's the first thing. Clear? There's the object to be negated.
Yeah.
Now let's think of other ways of briefly of looking at the object to be negated. And these are ones, I'm sure you've probably heard some of these before. When we use the reason of dependent arising to establish emptiness, what are we refuting? We're refuting that there's something which is independent, aren't we? Independent intrinsic reality. An independent reality would be, if we go back to that analogy we've just been talking about, would be there's something which is Jamyang Buddhist Centre independently of everything else. Independently of the people who work there, independently of the building, independently of the pictures, the library, the sign, independent of all those things, there is something which is Jamyang Buddhist Centre. Either there is something like that, or otherwise Jamyang Buddhist Centre is a dependent thing, existent in dependence upon the building, the sign, the people who work there, the books, the pictures. If Jamyang Buddhist Center exists independence upon those things, then it can't exist independently. Independence and dependence are mutually exclusive, aren't they? Something is either independent or dependent, isn't it? There's no third possibility of that. So Jamyang Buddhist Center is one of those two. It's either independent or it's dependent. And if it is independent, it means it doesn't depend upon anything. If it doesn't depend upon anything, it doesn't depend upon any of the things which Jamyang Buddhist Center is. The people, the place, the material things. And therefore you've got to find something existent which is Jamyang Buddhist Center, separate from all those things, independent of all those things, which obviously you can't do, can you? So again, another way of thinking about that object to be negated is if there was such a thing, and go back to the mind, what does the mind consist of? It consists of sense consciousnesses. I see things, I hear things, I feel things, I taste things. And it consists of thoughts, conceptual thoughts. I have dreams and memories and fears and planning and all the other emotions and thoughts that we have going on. Is there a mind independent of all those things or not? Is there can we point to something which is your mind, which is me, which is my thoughts or my mind, which doesn't exist independence upon what I'm thinking or what I'm seeing or what I'm hearing, what I'm tasting, what I'm touching? If there was such a thing, that would be an independent mind, wouldn't it? If we cannot establish or point to any mind other than what we're thinking, or what we're seeing, or what we're hearing, or what we're touching, if you can't point to any mind other than those things, then the mind only exists in dependence upon those things, isn't it? And obviously that's the way it does exist. Because can you point to any mind other than what's going on in the mind? Can you point to any mind separate from that? Can you point to anything which has the thoughts, which is not the thoughts? What do you find? Can you find anything? Can you find anything which is other than your senses knowing things, your thoughts thinking about things, your thoughts thinking about thoughts, your awareness of the thoughts? You can count all these parts of the mind, but can you find something which is independent of all those things?
What about the mind of clear light?
Mind of clear light. Okay.
I know it exists, but I'm not aware of it.
The mind of clear light is also a mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it also has an object. It must have an object because it's a mind.
Mm. What is that object? 'Cause I'm not aware of it. So I wouldn't know.
The object is if the mind of clear light is not manifest,
Yeah.
then you don't know what it just has the same object as the gross minds. It's just that you can't see that level of mind.
Right. Okay.
If you use it, if you meditate on the mind of clear light, the mind of clear light itself becomes an object.
Right.
So you can only see the mind of clear light by looking at it with another mind. The only way you can be aware of the existence of the mind of clear light is by looking at it with another part of your mind.
Can you not meditate on emptiness with the mind of clear light?
Yeah, but then the object is emptiness, obviously. Then,
Yeah. If you're using the mind of clear light and you feel...
If you use the mind of clear light to meditate on something, it's said that the mind of clear light can know the grosser levels of mind, but the grosser levels of mind can't take the mind of clear light exactly as an object.
Right.
It can only it can be manifest and then see all the other things from the mind of clear light. So the mind of clear light, if it's activated or if it's seen, it can have an object.
Yeah.
Which will be the grosser levels of mind, or emptiness,
Yeah.
or whatever. So it has an object. But if you're trying to look for it,
Yeah.
you're using another part of your mind to look for it,
Yeah.
can you find it without using another part of your mind to look for it? No, you can't.
Right. Yeah.
So independence upon looking for it, you find it.
Right.
Independent of looking for it, you can't find it. That's one point. Secondly, and again you have to think about this in terms of dependence, you have to think about the three levels of dependence. Things depend upon causes and conditions, they depend upon parts, and they depend upon a labelling consciousness. So the clear light of mind, is it mind?
Yeah.
If it's mind, does it exist independently? Yes, you have to. To be a mind must exist independently.
Yeah.
If it exists independently, does it exist independently of its causes?
Presumably its cause is the
Its cause would be a
mind.
previous moment of clear light.
Yeah.
So can a clear light mind exist without being caused by a previous moment of clear light mind?
No.
So it must depend upon
Yeah.
its causes. Can a clear light mind exist without depending upon its individual parts, its momentary parts? No,
Yeah.
it must. Can a clear light mind exist without someone coming on and saying this is a clear light mind?
Yes. So I will still have one without some. I've never heard of the concept and then met another Buddhist. I will still have a clear light mind.
You would, but the Buddha, someone knows it.
Yeah.
There's always someone who knows. The Buddha knows your clear light mind.
Yeah, I can say the Buddha would know I have a clear light mind, but yeah,
Until you know it, it doesn't exist for you.
it doesn't exist for me. No. And I might never have heard of the concept at all throughout my entire life.
That comes down to the people say for a Buddhist, does a tree falling in a place where there's no consciousness make a noise?
Yeah,
The Buddhist answer would be there's no tree. There isn't. How can there be a tree in a place where there's no consciousness knowing a tree? Phenomena exist because of consciousness. The definition of existence is things exist because they're known by our mind. So if they're not known by mind, they don't exist. So not only is there no noise from a tree that falls where there's no sentient being, there's no tree.
Oh, I love that.
But,
That'll be used.
the thing is, though, of course, there's always a consciousness. That's the point.
Yeah.
Because the Buddha's consciousness pervades everywhere, so there's always some consciousness.
Bishop Berkeley's answer was the mind of God, basically, with the tree falling.
So anyway, try to experientially, we're talking about the mind, we're talking about the entrance of the mind. Try to experientially see how we hold to a mind which is the same, even though it obviously can't be. The same, the mind we had when we were a child, the mind we had when we grew up, the mind we have now, it's the same mind. I did those things, I did those studies, I did that, I did that. We're pointing, we're holding on to something being the same there. And that's the object to be negated. That's the thing that doesn't exist. Also, you can think about the independent. An independent mind, separate from everything else, not dependent on anything, is the independent mind, which that's the object of negation as well. If it existed as we think it is, it would be independent. It wouldn't need to rely upon the causes and conditions or parts or anything else. So, before we stop for a break, one other brief way of thinking about the object of negation is think of your mind, if you can. Think of your mind. Give me an example of your mind. Everybody give me Tim, give me an example of your mind.
I could only give you an example of the thought.
Well, gone.
Thoughts. The thought, my visual consciousness there, and the thing jamming
The thought of what you're seeing here now.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that your mind?
No, it's the content of my mind.
So you're giving me an example of your mind on the basis of something which is not your mind.
Yeah. Basically, I can't give you an example of my mind.
Can you give me an example?
No.
Give me no.
Actually,
Give me-
no.
Give me something which. Presumably, when you went home from class yesterday, how was your mind feeling?
How honest are we being? Stretched.
Stretched.
Feeling stretched.
So, so at that time, stretched was an example of your mind. Probably it was, wasn't it? It was. Your mind was feeling stretched.
Yeah.
So you would say at that time, stretched was an example of your mind. Yes.
Mm.
Is that your mind?
No.
No. So you gave me an example of your mind, which is not your mind.
Mm.
Don't give me an example of your mind.
I was thinking I was thirsty.
Thirsty. Okay, same thing. Is the thought thirsty your mind? If it was, you'd always be thirsty, wouldn't you? And you're not, presumably. So you give an example of a mind which is not your mind. You're putting the label mind. Adam, give me an example.
I was just thinking after lunch I felt sleepy. That's the same
Sleepy,
thing. It's the same thing.
Same
yeah.
thing.
Good
And
to know.
one more.
An interesting mind.
Interested in a mind which is interested in yes.
But
Yeah.
it's the idea that the mind is never fixed, isn't it? You can have thousands of different states of mind within a day, constantly changing.
Exactly.
Not one of those you can call your mind.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Not only can you not call them the mind, but the point here is that, and this is the same with mind as with anything else, any one thing which you call your mind, label onto your mind, is always not going to be your mind.
Yeah.
So you're labelling mind onto something which is not mind. In the same way that you do with a table or with a phone or anything else, you label, your conceptual mind is putting the name. You see, if it was mind, it would always be, if say the thought of being sleepy was your mind. Before you came along and called it your mind, it would already have been sleepy. So you're always sleepy. Your mind would always be sleepy because that's your mind. You wouldn't need to call it sleepy because it already was. It was already, from beginningless time, it was already sleepy. Because sleepiness is in its nature. That's what it is. Not you calling it sleepy. You're calling it irrelevant. It is by nature sleepy. So it always is. But if that isn't the case, then you're labelling sleepiness onto something, you're labelling your mind onto something which is not your mind, which is ludicrous, and that's what we do all the time, isn't
When
it?
we do meditation before, when the thought arises or disappears, there seems to be like a sense of blackness either end of the thought for the mind. And maybe it's an image my mind's creating. It seemed that sort of sense of voidness or sort of darkness that the thought slips
I
into.
don't know about the darkness aspect. I think it's just YouTube.
Very
Prince of
popular.
Darkness.
No, I don't know. But, certainly, it's an important thing you bring up there, which I meaning to mention. Actually, one of the ways of looking at the clear light, not the clear light of mind, but the natural radiance or clarity of mind, is to notice the mind in between thoughts. Because you've got one thought. You say, well, that's thinking about lunch, and that's another thought thinking about yesterday. That's another thought. You've got all these thoughts, but there's a moment which we can all see here, especially when you're in between the thoughts. And that's when you're just seeing mind in its bare awareness, just its bare awareness. So it's an important sort of moment to home in on, that moment in between thoughts.
It's almost like the void of space but with no stars in it.
Yes.
It's a bit like that. I mean, the image my mind creating, but it's sort of that's the
That's right.
feeling I got.
Yeah. It's an important thing. The thing. It's a very useful moment to home into the bit in between thoughts. Right, let's take a break. I'll do one.
That's a rumble, isn't
It
it?
was, wasn't it?
I'm doing teas, Greg. So my mind's full.
There you go.
Full.
Just a label.
Yes,